Have you ever felt someone heard your words but totally missed the message you were intending? Or maybe you have nodded along in a conversation, but you really weren't there actually hearing what they were saying? Well, today we are going to dive into the three levels of listening, from surface level responses to the kind of deep listening that really builds trust and connection and real understanding in all of our relationships. Welcome to Communication Skills for Working Women. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Rose May. Do you find yourself second guessing or avoiding conversations because you're worried about being misunderstood?
You're not alone. On this show, we're sharing tangible tools for assertiveness, emotional resilience, and real life communication wins and fails.
Let's sharpen our communication together. Let me take you back to a conversation that I had last year. I was telling a friend about a tough decision that I had to make at work. And I had barely gotten through the first sentence before they jumped in with advice. So fun. Um, and it was just, you should leave if it's really that bad. And I nodded politely, but inside I felt really unheard. I knew they meant well, but they missed what I was actually trying to say. I definitely wasn't asking for a solution. I was just trying to process the weight of that situation. It was a really difficult decision, and there were a lot of complicating factors. And so in that moment, I learned something really powerful. Hearing is not the same as listening, and most of us operate on autopilot at level one. So let's break down those three levels.
Yeah, let's get right into the three levels of listening. Take it away.
So, level one, you are listening to speak. Basically, you're waiting for your turn to talk. I think we've all been in situations and in conversations where we recognize that someone is just waiting to jump in and speak, and they're only picking up what's relevant to them, right? If you're at a level one, you're only picking up what's relevant to you. So you might steer the conversation back to yourself. An example of that is, oh, that happened to me too. And then you go into your story. I think, like I said, we all have experience with that particular interaction.
I have an experience with that when I was working on an event. We were planning an event, and I had a committee that I was working with. And this was, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago now. And we were dividing up this event into different sections. And one of the individuals on the committee said, they, as they were explaining what they wanted for the event, I did not understand what they said because all I could think about was what I wanted in this event.
Mm.
Okay. So he had suggested that during the section he was in charge of, that we were a little more relaxed and a little more laid back. And I interpreted it as he didn't really want to do it. And so I kind of took over because I was not listening to him. And as the event happened, during, like, it was in the middle of the event that all of a sudden it clicked in my head that I did not listen to him. And I went,
Ugh.
oh my gosh, I am so sorry. Like, you were wanting a time where we could just kind of relax and connect instead of it being, moving from thing to thing to thing. And I attribute that back to poor listening skills because I was so focused on just me. I
Yeah.
was all I could think about was what I wanted for this event.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one way, like in a work environment where you can get stuck on that level one listening when you're just so thinking about what you want to accomplish. You may not even think you're thinking about yourself,
Yeah.
but you're thinking about your goals for that project instead of, or event or presentation, instead of considering what other people might want to get out of it. Another way that we hear or see this level one listening is like one upping each other, right? where we're like, oh, well, I did that, or oh, I did that. You're
Oh my
just
gosh, those are the
stuff.
worst.
But I also have to say, this level one listening can also be a really great time of connection. I was just at my high school class reunion, and there were so many conversations and just sharing of stories where people were saying, "Oh, I've experienced that too." And it wasn't
Mm,
an one-upping, but it was this connection. And I guess you could say that kind of goes into level 2, but it's also a surface level connection
sure.
that is really valuable to people. So I guess I want to just say level 1 isn't a bad place to be all the time.
No, for sure. And I think even another great example of sometimes like level one connection, depending on what kind of group it is, could be a support group. Sometimes a support group is a level one connection kind of group because we all have this maybe this shared experience and we're trying to connect um, by sharing what it is that we've these experiences that we've had in our lives, and that can bring people together. It also creates, this universality of like the human experience. It also helps, for people to feel less lonely, right? So it can be really
Mhm.
connecting. So not necessarily a terrible thing, right?
Right.
But oftentimes it can be. And so level one listening feels more like a tennis match. You're waiting for the other person to serve so you can smash it back.
So let's move over to level 2. Level 2 listening is listening to understand. You are genuinely paying attention to what's being said. You're not like looking on your phone and kind of listening. You are there paying attention. You're following the speaker's story, and you're really holding on to the key points that they say. And you recognize their perspective, not just yours. So, an example for level 2 listening is you could respond by saying, "So, you're saying the pressure at work isn't just about the workload, but how your boss communicates it."
And that's a really great like clarifying question. We have another episode on clarifying information, but it also shows your listener that you're really invested in what they have to say. Another example of that, and I think we've all experienced this too, when someone's sharing a story or they're talking about something that's happened to them, and you're invested, you're listening, you're following along, you're following and understanding the sequence of events, but you're also making connections throughout the story and understanding their message. I know that I've had conversations where someone is starting with a story and maybe they express why this event is so difficult for them, and then they get to the end of the story and suddenly all these points come together, and I can think of a conversation recently where I was like, oh, that was really hard for you because at the beginning of our conversation, you mentioned that this is an experience you've had in the past and how it impacted you. And so, even just being able to put those connections, make those connections together and understanding the sequence of events is a really great way to practice that listening to understand.
I was just thinking with this example of, so you're saying the pressure at work isn't just about the workload, but about how your boss communicates it. If in that previous example you gave, if your friend would have responded in that way, how much better it would have felt for you instead of them just saying, "Okay, just quit your job."
Exactly. Exactly.
Just leave.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, I wasn't looking for a solution, right? I needed to work that out verbally.
Right.
Yeah.
So level 2, there's a lot of validating that happens in level 2. I know that I'm listening to understand, which is level 2 listening, when I'm thinking about asking clarifying questions and I'm not thinking about my own experience. I may think about my own experience to offer some insight or even some of that connection of saying, like,
Hmm.
I can relate to this. I've had an experience uh, similar. Sometimes that isn't helpful in a situation, depending on what the situation is. But taking the time to listen and to ask those clarifying follow up questions can be so helpful.
Yeah.
So, level 2 listening instead of it feeling like a tennis match where you're just smashing that ball back and forth, level two listening feels a little bit more like a puzzle where you're gathering the pieces and you're starting to put the pieces together to see the whole picture.
Right. And that moves us on to level three listening, which is listening for meaning. So in level three, you hear what's said and what's not said. So you notice someone's tone, their emotion, their body language if you're in person. You sense the emotion behind their message. Maybe there's some fear, pride, sadness, excitement, worry. An example of this would be, wow, it sounds like you're not just frustrated, you might be feeling unappreciated. And maybe we don't always speak in those exact terms, right? But the gist of the message is that we're looking beyond the frustration that might be expressed, and we're recognizing that a person is feeling unappreciated in this moment.
Right. So we've moved from just listening to respond to listening to understand and then really listening for the meaning. And I think that moving into this listening for the meaning can sometimes get really tricky because we may project our own thoughts or feelings on it, or we may make false assumptions about people. And so it's important to sit in that place of trying to gain understanding and searching for that deeper meaning through asking questions, through clarifying, parroting back. This is what I heard you say. Was
Yeah.
there more to it? Did I understand you correctly? What else would help me understand what you're saying? Those are just a few things that you can ask as you're trying to gain that deeper meaning.
Yeah, I have an example of a conversation that I had with a friend a little while ago, and we were talking about an experience that she that she was trying to kind of process and work out, and she said, but everything's fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. And I just kind of looked at her, and her head was down and her shoulders were slumped over and she was teary, and I was like, "What do you mean you're fine? Look at you. You definitely do not look fine, right?" It's just being able to see past maybe some of what's being said and look at what's really being felt or expressed. That is sometimes really important. And so, level three listening is presence. It's about listening with your ears, your heart, and your intuition.
So here's your homework this week. Pick one conversation, just one. Don't try to get into all of them. Just pick one conversation and challenge yourself to stay in level two or level three listening the whole time. That might mean slowing down. That might mean asking open ended questions. That also might mean just being quiet long enough to hear what's behind the words.
We underestimate the power of silence, I think.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
And just as you were describing your friend's physical presence when they were saying, it's fine, but clearly you could see that it wasn't fine.
Yeah.
There's so much power in saying, wait, uh, the words you're saying don't match the way your
Yeah.
body is, or even if you're on the phone or on a text message, you can still sense things. And there's a lot of power in like pointing that out through curiosity and really being grounded and filled with love and genuine concern, saying, wait, I'm sensing things don't match. And know what? If they come back and they say, no, I'm fine, then
When it is
then
what it
you're
is.
fine.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah.
Um, Here is a prompt that you can try if you're not exactly sure how to really step into that understanding. You can say, can you tell me more about that? That is just such a powerful question. You don't even have to say,
Yeah.
can you tell me more? You can just say, tell me more.
Yeah.
I want to understand more. Tell me more about that. You can ask someone that 3 times usually, and you will get more and more and more understanding.
For sure. For sure.
Then really listen. as they respond. And if you catch yourself drifting back to level one where you're just wanting to send that tennis ball back and just share with them your story, that's okay. It's okay to like these are skills that that we all need to practice. And so just notice it and reset. I will stop in my conversations with people that I work with, in conversations with my children, in conversations with my spouse. I will stop and I will say, "Wait, let me try that again."
Same.
I my actual intention is this. And it's okay to move through these different levels of listening where we're just responding, where we're understanding, where we're gaining greater meaning, and it's okay to not always do it perfectly. I don't know if there is a perfect.
I don't know if there's a perfect
I
perfect
don't.
way of doing these things, right? Because it's context dependent, right? We
Mhm.
each have our own personalities and our own ways of communicating with different people. And so, yeah, I don't know that there's a perfect way to do it. I do think, like in the last episode, we talked about pausing. I think that if you need to reset, just pausing is a really great way to just stop and start over. I have had the same experience. Sometimes I'll say, blah, 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 let me start over because that is not what I was trying to say. Or that is not what I was trying to ask. And there's nothing wrong with correcting yourself. I think that's actually very thoughtful and intentional and can come across as very genuine and authentic. And so those are our three tips. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs a little reminder to listen deeper. Don't be mean about it. And if you want to keep growing your communication skills and hit that follow button, we've got so much more coming. You can follow us on Instagram at Communication Skills for Women or our Facebook group, linked in the podcast notes. We love hearing from you, so please send us a message. We look forward to hearing about your experiences and just bringing those up and talking about them and working through this together. So until next time, speak clearly and listen bravely. We'll see you later. When you feel confident in your communication, everything changes.
We'd love to hear your wins, failures, and insights on Instagram at Communication Skills for Women. Leave a review and connect with us.
Until next time, speak clearly and listen bravely.